Hi, this is Jackie Rose, and this is Jackson Rose, a podcast all about knitting and the makers who make things. I've been recording for quite some time without pressing play. This is Jackie with Jackson Rose. I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode is going to be about the new pattern Shrug season. It's going to be about my visit to Block and Fiber, the Fiber Festival there, and a little bit also about my birthday. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, thanks for coming back. So I kind of feel in this moment in August, it's like there's this very special turn that happens in the Midwest, at least in August, where the weather just shifts. So we're in this moment in the summer where you're suddenly aware that it's not going to last forever, and winter is, and fall. These are part of our realities too. But there's something very energizing about that shift as well. I'm going to take you back a little bit on the past year just to set the stage for today. And just say that it was about this time last year that I released my first paid for pattern, the SoHo Square, which was in Purl Soho's Linen Quill, and it was also in Lamb & Kids Birdie. And then I released the Cinch, which was a shrug that had shaping. And then I went to Rhinebeck. And, many of us experienced challenges and learned some things and had to rethink how we did fiber festivals, and had some disappointments, and also found pleasure and connection too. But it was a difficult festival, and but for me, the great outcome of that was getting to have Amy Pelko come to the States, come to my house and stay with her, or have her stay with me. And after that festival and her visit, I started working on the snow crocuses, and I ended up launching Jackson Rose and up the Patreon and the snow crocus class. And I made this sweater several different ways. I taught the class on Bainbridge Island. And then with Melissa Jenkins had a retreat where we really dialed into talking about our making choices. So my hope with the retreat and with the podcast in general and the Patreon in general is to be sort of an intermediary between some of the, I would say, channels for communication are when a new yarn is released, when a new color is released, when a new pattern is released. And those are very exciting times, and there's so much that goes into birthing new yarns, new colors, new patterns. And at the same time, there needs to be a voice that's just the steady voice of the maker and her choices over time and her needs in her life, or his needs in his life and his wardrobe, his experience, his history, her story. And so I feel like every maker has a story around their choices in those patterns, those colors, those yarns. And that's my hope here, is in the retreat and in this content, is to give voice to that, give voice to why we would even choose one thing or the other. So it was very rewarding to have the retreat. Afterwards, I went to Scotland to a yarn festival and stayed with my friend Amy Pelko. I met Ivana there. She stayed with us too, of Republic of Me. And it was lovely. And I'm giving you all this backdrop to say that Shrug season was born when I went to Scotland. I had been out on Bainbridge Island teaching a snow crocus class. I had known that Flock and Fiber was coming in the summer, and I worked with the Lamb & Kid to develop some new palettes for Friday Shrugs, because originally Elmer was only in 100-gram skeins, and now they had it in 50-gram skeins, which would make the kits a lot more accessible. And that was very fun. So I knew that I had plans, I had yarn. It was all going to happen. And then when I went to Edinburgh, Amy and I ended up going into this deep dive on creativity, design, inspiration, etc., by watching. It all started with John Galliano's collection for Maison Margiela. And we watched a documentary about John Galliano, then Vivian Westwood, then Martin Margiela, then Alexander McQueen. And it was wonderful to immerse in these, not single items, but collections and themes and collaborations and inspirations and, technical feats of beauty and of joy and of, sheer creative force. It was very inspiring. And I'll list those documentaries in the show notes. It's like we're all knitters, but we're little small scale designers designing one collection. They're designing them over and over and over, and we're designing a collection for ourselves, how we want to show up in the world. And I think these fashion designers really understand the fact that you can make an impact through your dress. You can make an impact through your imagination, through the energy you bring through your clothes and how you present yourself in the world. They absolutely understand that. And so it was a joy to watch them at their work and hear their stories and hear their challenges too. And so I let myself be inspired. And that's where this first Shrug came out, which I'll tell you about. But I had expected that I would be coming back and I would be doing the Gither, because I had already taught this snow crocus class and taught how to modify, how to change your colors, how to change your silhouettes. It's just such a passion of mine, is modification and color choice. And I had expected that that's what I was going to do, because I had modified the original The Gither. If you're new here, I will just quickly show you. It's this pattern by Amy Pelko. I had already modified it by making this long scarf. But what ended up happening is my passion for modification and color did not get fulfilled yet through the Gither. It got fulfilled through these Shrugs. So why don't I go ahead and start talking about them. The first one is called Vivian. And this was designed around a Vivian Westwood dress that I saw, and I just loved the colors in the dress. I loved the stripe sequence, the kind of a fade and then a contrast color. So I literally tried to copy the dress into a Shrug, and what was available to me, I was in Scotland and I was online, and I just ordered Knitting for Olive merino. And when I came home, I found that I had to hold it double. I had often wanted to make a fingering weight Shrug, just, fingering weight held single, but you would have had to knit on such small needles and have such so many stitches. It just seemed kind of ridiculous. So this is fingering weight held double. Knitting for Olive, I love their palette. I think they have like 85 colors or something like that. And so it was easy to find, to just use their online images and to order the colors that came close Another yarn that's like that has a ready available pattern that I love is Linen Quill. And this is the Linen Quill Friday Shrug. This was actually the original Friday Shrug that I had made, and then I translated it into Elmer. The Friday Shrug, some of you might know, was originally released as a free pattern, but it's part now of this Shrug Season collection. And it literally actually was psychological journey and work for me to say to myself, oh, this is not just a tube. It's not just one by one ribbing. It takes time to come up with these templates and to have these means for you to play with color, and that's worth something. In the tradition of pattern writing in knitting, sometimes we might question whether we're a real designer or a real knitter, because a real knitter would be able to knit brioche, or a real designer would be able to design sweaters. And I think those things are just false, arbitrary. Again, if you think about it as, are you in response to your environment? Are you listening to the quiet voices that say, I like this, I love this? Are you willing to do trial and error to get what you need from the project you're designing? The fact is when you make something like this, I think I know I had to knit it, I knit it about this far and then had to start over and re-knit it, and it lived in my head for quite a long time before it came out. So this was the original Friday Shrug in Linen Quill. And since that time, I've always loved Linen Quill, so it's very exciting for me to be able to show this shrug in this yarn. They too have a beautiful palette. And I'm very excited to announce that starting in September, I'm going to launch a whole Shrug Season Cal. And Purl SoHo they have shared with me their entire palette of Linen Quill so that I can show it to you, so that in a future video, when we're doing that together, we can make combinations together and really play with the yarn, move it around, and I can show you how to design a Friday Shrug and your own palette that suits you. So that's very exciting, and this is the Linen Quill one. The next inspiration these were the Elmer Friday Shrugs, and I started off trying to make one in this palette that I loved. And as I was using these yarns, and this is, it's totally gorgeous, I saw an ad for Gucci and I just really liked, I don't know if you can tell the difference. This is totally acceptable, but I felt like this had a little more edge to it, a little more tension in the color choices, and I love a little tension in a design. So this, and you can see if you end up buying the pattern, you'll see that the pattern can say, oh, do exactly this many rows here, here, and here. But when I knit them, I don't do that. I kind of just feel my way through, and I just go, oh, that looks about right. I want that many rows. And, I change it up and I blend it, and I very much enjoy marling the colors and feeling the proportions out. So I give you, an exact guideline, but it's just a guideline. For instance, the one thing about these shrugs is the particular color that you need the most yarn of is the one, not the very center one, but the one just beyond that. This one here is the one you use most of. So this is the anemone shrug. This is based on a French anemone, but just the whole making. I could make Friday shrugs. They're just so fun to make. It's really a complete delight making your color story for a Friday shrug. And yet we also have kits. And what I want to say that's such a thrill to me is I did go to Flock and Fiber, which was hosted by La Mercerie. And La Mercerie, let me just grab this right here. There's two shrugs, which you'll see, that are in Knitting for Olive. And La Mercerie carries the Knitting for Olive merino. And so they're a beautiful place to see the whole palette in person if you're in that area. And of course, the Lamb and Kid sponsored my visit out there, and I was in the Lamb and Kid booth. And so underneath this video, I am sponsoring with both La Mercerie and Lamb and Kid a giveaway of a shrug quantity of yarn. I have a kit for this to give to you, and I have a possible combination, but you don't have to. You could choose a different one from La Mercerie. I chose what I plan to do during the Shrug season, Cal, is remake each one with you and kind of play around with them. So I have the one that I want to remake. Maybe I'll show that to you right now. Okay, let's see if I can show you what I had picked out. There's this sort of, these are the four colors, and that's the pop for a Vivian. And then this is the main color right here. So a very pink one instead of such a blue one, a pink one. How you would enter to win the giveaway is you would share with me, and I will share one at the end of the video, how you thrive. That's what I'm really interested in, is what are one of the ways you're thriving right now. I gave, I'll just do it right now. On Patreon, I gave away a shrug quantity and a pattern. And I asked my patrons, how did they thrive? And this is the winning answer I wanted to share with you. This is from Linda. And she said, you asked this question on my 65th birthday, and I wanted to sit and reflect on my answer. Because thriving now at this stage of my life looks very different. At some stages, I might have even answered that I was merely surviving. But here I am, and thriving means listening to my inner voice, the one that often whispers, the one that always knows what is best for my soul. Now I greet her, eager to hear her wisdom. Tell me, I ask her, what do I need? So that's Linda, who has won the Patreon giveaway. She doesn't know it yet, so she's finding out right here if she's watching. Congratulations, Linda, and happy 65th birthday. So a Cal is coming. It's being launched with some shrugs, and it will conclude with Purl SoHo's also sponsoring this shrug season, as well as Knitting for Olive. So it really feels to me like an absolute embracing of this idea of we, the knitters, being the medium through which all these colors and yarns and patterns flow. And so it's very, I just kind of like the experience I had at Flock. It's just very inclusive of celebrating the hand dyers, celebrating the yarn manufacturers that have beautiful commercial yarns, and celebrating ourselves and the fact that we have such vast amount of choices to really customize a piece for ourselves. So another idea that I had for quite some time was to take an advent and turn it into a shrug. I know how much people like advents, and I finally got to participate in one in 2022 with Hello Stella. And I'm just going to flash, like, here are the little cakes. This is like a completely full box of leftovers. So you can imagine that it's just kind of your standard fingering weight advent situation, which many people have. And I'm going to take the microphone off for a minute here so I can put a shrug on. I don't know where to put this while I'm putting the shrug on, so I'm sorry, I'm just setting it down. So here's an advent shrug, and it is basically you take 24 mini skeins and you divide them into 6 sections of 4, and then of course have a main color. And it's just completely delightful to work with such varied colors in somebody's palette that they dreamed up. And so a typical advent mini skein set would yield 2 of these shrugs. This one, I have a whole box of leftovers, and here they are. You know, this is, what is that, 4 times 3, that's 12, so this is too thick. 2 layers thick of leftovers to make a shrug for yourself and a friend. And that's kind of one of the things I love about shrugs, is this whole, like, they're really great gifts because you don't have to worry about the fit as much. Of course, you can always add more stitches or take more away. This one I made a little small just because I wanted to make sure I had enough yarn, and I had plenty of yarn. I could have made it bigger. It's fine. So it's Hello Stella, and then the main color is a Knitting for Olive, and all of these things are held double, and this is the Advent shrug. I would say the only thing I tried to do is just spread out, you know, the palette a little bit. This particular palette was based on Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette film, that the colors from that film. And of course, that film had a very delightful soundtrack that was from my childhood, like Wow 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 and Psychedelic Furs, and I don't know, I think Cocteau Twins were in there. So for me, this has all of that feeling in it, and it feels amazing. And then it'll also feel amazing because I have yarn to share. So that's also a joy with an Advent. So that's the Advent shrug. And the next one is one of my favorites. This is the Blodell. When I was on Bainbridge the summer before the SoHo was released, I went to Blodell. I mean, I've been to Blodell many times, but I went to Blodell and I was really struck by a painting of Virginia Blodell in the living room. And I was just struck by the soothing palette, the color of the interior walls, the color of the painting, the color of the stone house. And it's just elegant, classic, timeless style. And at the same time, I had seen a skirt that I loved. And so this stripe pattern is imitating that skirt. And I too had a skirt. Let me show you. So I had this skirt, which I love. Has this lovely kind of thick hem, whatnot. And I wanted this to go. So I chose this yarn specifically also to go with this skirt, and I couldn't be more thrilled. I had thought I would do a Jessie May test knit in the summer and make a top to go under it, to go with it, but I didn't get around to that this summer. The Blodell is knit in Knitting for Olive as well, but you know, you can substitute like Charlene did. She substituted Lamb and Kid Cabin, which is a DK wool, for the Knitting for Olive merino. And we went there and we took photos, and it was really quite delightful. I'll pop some of the Instagram footage from the release in there, but the Blodell is really quite special to me. It is the one that I have on my needles right now. I'll show you those colors. Knitting for Olive gave me this yarn. It's I have a friend who has a house and uses a lot of these colors in the house, and so I decided to give it a whirl myself. And of course, it was such a joy to have something orange to cast on after spending the weekend at Flock and Fiber with Gigi. But I'll tell you more about that later. But this is my current Blodell, and it is a gift. So it's not for me, but I do love the palette. I love it very much. And then I started to go, these things, the Advent Shrug, the Blodell Shrug, they had been in my mind for a long time, for years, and they finally were coming to fruition because I had knit, I had just finished knitting 3 Friday Shrugs. I had knit the Vivienne, I had knit and I just was on a roll, and I was just responding to that roll. So the next one that I did was another linen quill one, and this is called Bistro. And of course, I had worked with, Kristen had told me about the 3-word method of defining your style. And my word for my style, one of my words, was bistro. And if you can imagine anything you'd see in a French bistro, white rim soup bowls, denim aprons, white tablecloths, highball glasses, copper bowls, salt and pepper shakers, just all this sort of like neutral, rustic bread, easy salads. I know it's not necessarily a fashion idea, but it is like a feeling. And I like that feeling of sort of relaxed, yet refined. That would be what I would think of as bistro. And I find this totally delightful. This is in, I think I said, linen quill. It also begs to have a sweater with it, which is something I'm looking forward to doing soon. But it felt so appropriate because I teased it out at the 4th of July, but I also knew that the Olympics was coming. So this for me will always commemorate that. And at the same time, it paralleled the whole creative journey of watching the fashion biographies. I hadn't known about the designer Tom Brown and his aesthetic, his sporty aesthetic. I just adore, and I adored his collection that I saw this summer where in preparation for the Olympics, it was just Muslims coming down the aisle that were highly embellished, that were really showcasing the tailoring and the work inside a garment. And the only embellishment would be, red and blue stripes, or then over the top, glorious beading and whatnot. But this is sort of the Tom Brown bistro, just an ode to classics. And it was just very fun and easy to make this. I know Sarah made one from the Lamb and Kid. She made one in Elmer, which is, of course, you can do it in Elmer, and hers was so perfect for her. I feel like it was gray with green stripes and then, pink pop, and probably plaid is my favorite color at the top, and it's very fun because you can make it very like easy, neutral, what you always wear, and then pop, which I love being able to do. So that was Bistro. So you can see right now it's about July and I have 5 shrugs, 4 new patterns, and re-releasing the Friday so that you'd have the linen quill numbers as well. And then the new Lamb and Kid 50 gram skeins of Elmer for Flock and Fiber. And 5 felt like a weird number. And I was on the plane and I just noticed Purl SoHo's shimmer blanket. And it was a shimmer blanket made with these 9-note bundles. And let me grab a 9-note bundle. I thought these were completely inspiring palettes and I loved them. And on the plane, I decided then and there, I'm getting myself 2 of these bundles for my birthday. And I'll actually show you the way the shimmer blankets are designed is you take the bundles and you put them in cakes, and you have 1 set in one bag and 1 set in another bag. So let's pretend you have, I'm making this up, you know, because I know they don't have orange and red. And you'd pull from the orange, you'd pull from the red, you'd pull from the orange, you'd pull from the red, you'd pull from, and it ends up looking like this. This is when I pulled from 2 different bundles, because I ended up having lots of yarn and I was able to make 3. But this is what the kind of their original design, and they have beautiful, if you go to their website, you can see their shimmer palettes worked out that they've done, and they're quite lovely. But that isn't what I wanted to do. So what I did instead was I took 1 bundle and made it the main color and faded it down this way. And then I took another bundle and faded it from dark to light. So this is dark to light and light to dark. And I ended up popping in a contrast color. But what was so delightful about these is that you could pair them. So you could make one for yourself and make one for a friend, and they would be reciprocal. Do you see how this light is over here as a light and this dark is up here as a dark? So anyways, and they can go in either direction, and it turns out these 2 bundles make 3 shrugs, which is wonderful. And the story behind these 2 is that I'm able to knit these and send these to friends who I love and admire and send them off into the world. I haven't sent them yet because I want to show them to you. And I also want to say, when the knit along gets started, I also have 9-note bundles to play with and show combinations and certainly make more. And I know I have friends currently knitting some right now, so it'll be exciting to show you different variations. And I certainly want to make another set because it was so delightful. And this is called the Shimmer Shrug. This is the only one where the yarn is held single, and it's fabulously soft, and it has a perfect texture for a shrug. Let me put one on. So I chose into what I thought would be flattering on me and what would look nice with my winter coat. I have a gray winter coat, and I was also inspired by, to be honest, Miu Miu and all the blues that Miu Miu shows in their collection. So this is the Shimmer Shrug in Purl SoHo's 9-note bundles. And if you purchase 2 bundles, you end up being able to make at least 2, if not 3 shrugs. You know, any shrug, you can always make it smaller or make it larger, and that's up to you. And lastly, I was going to Flock and Fiber, and I had received yarn from Moondrake, you know, maybe a year ago, to make another academic fest, and I haven't had time to do it yet. I see it all caked staring at me right there. And but I had also fallen in love with a particular blue that she had done, and we had been talking about it for a while. And she ended up sending me this yarn called Moonspun, and that's what this Vivian is in Moonspun. And it's Moonspun is a sport weight superwash wool, and so I didn't want to use it for the academic fest because that's steeked, but I thought I can use it for a shrug, and I very much enjoyed knitting a Vivian with a dark background. And speaking of on the side, she test knit the pattern for me, and she has one with a dark background that is absolutely beautiful. This is Moondrake's yarn called Moonspun. It's a collaboration with Spin Cycle Yarns, and this was at Flock and Fiber, this sample. I wonder if I have the book handy. Hold on. I do. So I have this book of David Seidner portraits, and they're just exquisite color stories. So I used this to choose my colors. And each one of these portraits is sort of meant to look like an oil painting, and they're contemporary individuals, but the fabrics are so magnificent and scrumptious, as you can see. And so it is fun to design, right? Just taking something that inspires you, that you think is, you know, beautiful, and knit out of that. I'll just show you one more. Like, do you see all these, you know, these gorgeous silks and mauves and pinks? So that rich palette was inspired by this book. And in particular, I need to say that this color right here, this bright one, this was hard for me to put in there, but of course, totally necessary. My impulse is to just put taupe in, but I forced myself to put the berry in, and I'm glad that I did. So to recap, Shrug Season, 6 designs, 6 templates more or less that you can use. Sport weight, fingering, DK yarn. I have, you know, cast on numbers, a huge range of cast on numbers, so that it has flexibility like shrugs do, to be the size that you need it to be and be able to use the yarn that you want to use. It's an invitation for you to explore, to play, to build your own confidence. It's not designed, it just never has been designed to be, you have to knit exactly this. If you know how to do a gauge swatch, it's very easy to make the size you want. It's very easy to put it on and go, oh, I need more stitches, so cast on some more, or make your needle size bigger. It's very, I think by now we know the Shrug is a very flexible design, and I just wanted to give you more stripe sequences and designs within that silhouette, because the silhouette is so generous, and then you have a chance to play. As you can imagine, that's a lot of knitting. I knit all of these, with the exception of this one, between going to Scotland and Flock and Fibre. So every single one of these. And I have to admit, you know, by the end, but the very last one, the one I just showed you, I was sore and I needed a break, and I went to Flock and Fibre with nothing on my needles. And I wrote a poem about it that I think is really important too. And it's funny that I'm going to segue about this after just showing you a stack of knits. And the poem's called A Case for Staying Open. A case for staying open, staying empty, having nothing on your needles. Surrendering that part of you that needs attention. Closing your mouth, waiting like it's a devotion. Because sometimes all that empty, all that listen, all that watching is excavating you for this pause, this pickaxe, and making space for new flocks, new light, and love songs you never even imagined. I got to release Shrug Season on my birthday and go to Flock empty needled. And before I went to Flock, I had this glorious birthday, and I will say a real awakening, to be honest. It really feels like my life up until this birthday, my life after this birthday, and my commitment and my realization on this particular birthday is that we're all life force and we're needed. It's necessary to bring your life force out. That literally is what vivifies the world. And I wrote a poem about that too, which I might as well read to you. What is an artist? Do you ever ask yourself this? I'll show you mine if you show me yours. An artist is the cat bringing home his mole, dragging blood and dirt across the floor. An artist eats the bone marrow and lets certain things remain unsaid. Simply put, an artist is life force, the expression of a living universe that wants to touch, taste, see, feel, and hear itself. She is not her products. She is not even a noun. She is the threshold and you walking through it. What is an artist? Now you tell me, and let us have this conversation for the rest of our lives. Because I'm going to confess, actually, when you offer something, when you make an offering like a pattern or a new yarn or new color, you're taking a risk because you're putting yourself into the public sphere for public approval or public censure. And the real work is to put yourself out there regardless of this, and to not really give it much heed at all. And it's such an act of faith to think that whatever you're doing things, whatever you're doing is valuable, whether anybody recognizes it or not, and to know that and hold that for yourself. And I literally am just thrilled to give voice to that, be an example of that. And I was on a walk yesterday and I stopped by the coffee shop and I met a stranger, the barista. Somehow we talked about knitting, and she started to tell me about all of her insecurities, about her skill level. And I was like, just keep doing it. Like, it isn't actually about anything you make. It's about the fact that you, through going through the motions of learning things, choosing things, failing things, you add life rings around yourself. You fortify yourself through the making, through being a creative being. This is why we knit. This is what I love about knitting. So I go to Flock and Fiber, and the last, I went to Edinburgh, and that was a fiber festival, and it was lovely, but it was, it was coming off of Wool and Folk and its imperfections, frankly. It's just imperfections, and we, of course, all have them. And I learned things, and I was disappointed too. At the same time, it's so lovely to see us collectively learning from things that have gone wrong, and not just sitting in judgment, but making changes and learning. What else can we do? And it was really lovely though to see. I totally felt the difference setting up, that these vendors who are traveling across the country, sometimes hauling like 13 suitcases on an airplane. Can you imagine what it's like to push 13 suitcases through an airport? And having the stuff maybe not even arrive in time. I mean, so much goes into setting up those stalls and having the technology work, having the product arrive, having the ideas. It's such a labor of love. And so, first of all, to see the vendors be loved back by the host, to have the space be big enough for them, to have time and order, all of that was so appreciated, because then when your vendors can feel like they've arrived with their best intentions, they can translate that and give that to you, that experience to you when you visit. And it was so spacious and light-filled and glorious. I just feel like it's the premier knitting event of the country at this moment, in terms of how gorgeous that space is and how thoroughly it was thought out. So I just am very grateful to the organizers, Jess at La Mercerie and her team that organized the event. I have ideas too for future things that they could add, but as it stands, the second one was beautiful and lovely, and everyone seemed so happy. But before we even got to Flock and Fiber, Lamb and Kid hosted me and Gigi and had a birthday cake for us at the shop. It was really, really, really special for me to go in and practice this practice shutting up and looking around and noticing people and listening to them and asking them questions and not talking about myself. And if you were there, maybe I talked about myself. I mean, sometimes I just can't help it and I talk. But I really kept trying to practice listening, witnessing, being curious, being open. And I was so rewarded. I was so well rewarded. And it ended up being, we ended up having 4 birthday girls blow out the cake. And that was delightful. And we made our wishes together. And I got to hear about other people's accomplishments. So one thing I loved is meeting Sasha, who I had never met before. I think I overheard her friend talking about, you've manifested this year. And I said, what did you manifest? And then she pulls out of her bag this book, Island Vibes, that she's just released. And there's all these gorgeous designs, and it was all photographed in Jamaica, where she's both from Canada and Jamaica. And I got to hear the story of this, this creation of hers, her joy, her pride and joy, and her astonishment that it even happened. It says, look at this. Let this book be your guide as you knit your way through my vibrant and rhythmic world of summer knitwear, with Jamaica as your muse and the Caribbean as your backdrop. And Sasha was a Leo and had a birthday, and she blew out cakes with me. And Kiki was there. She was one of my muses from a long time ago. She works for Magpie, and she has a sweater I've yet to imitate, but I desperately want to make. And Gigi, of course. And I wouldn't have found out about Sasha's book or her joy or her story or her children or her husband or any of that if I had been just caught up in myself. And I can just put that on repeat times 100. And one of the true joys of the weekend was getting to witness Gigi. I loved seeing everyone's life force, and Gigi's, I don't know. It was just, I got to spend so much time just next to her, watching like the river of people come by, watching them interact with her, watching her generosity, watching her elegance, her grace, her kindness, watching her good instincts unfold again and again, the way she was just such a gracious host, the way she would make introductions, the way she was patient, the way she was a collaborator, and her joy. And I mean, there couldn't have been a greater lesson than just being around her. And so, of course, I wrote a poem about Gigi too, which I'm going to share. I feel like we all have the potential, but we have to slow down enough and we have to live through the challenges. That's why she has this authenticity, as she's lived through her challenges. She is vulnerable because she practices self-compassion. And so I feel like if you practice self-compassion and vulnerability, it gives you this patience and loving kindness this way. If you're afraid to practice that, which many of us are, we defend ourselves and arm ourselves with judgments and criticisms of other people. But not Gigi. I think she lets that go. So this is called Watching Gigi Shine. Of course there is orange, the warm, the sun, the lioness. But today I saw your blue, the ocean inside you, the midnight sky, the inhale and exhale of standing next to you, watching stars and waters, people passing, rolling in or spraying you like a great Hokusai wave, white on your blue coastline, as if you, love, were the shore we were seeking all along. So I got to read that to her, and that was a joy for me. And I got to just dance with her. And speaking of dancing, dance with Charlene, be inspired with Charlene, play with Charlene, twin with Charlene. It was quite a joy. And everyone at Lamb and Kid, starting with Bob and Sarah, who are so generous, so full of love for this community. It was such a pleasure to be moving in and out amongst those people who really care about everybody that they interact with. It felt very, very much a place of care, a place of comfort, a place of celebration. So that was wonderful. And there were so many vendors. I'm aware that I got around, but I didn't get around to all of them by any means. So, of course, I went over and I took Sasha's skirt and put it on and played with it. And, I want to knit her skirt. She'd already sold out of Island Vibes by the time I got there. One of the people Gigi introduced me to was Birdie Parker. And so I got this knit stitch necklace. And I've read you too many poems already, but I feel like the knit stitch is a very powerful metaphor because it's both a knit and a purl at once, and it's such a simple thing, and yet we can do so much with this. And this shape is a very feminine shape. And at any rate, I really loved this design, this necklace. So I got that, and I loved it. I didn't get to record with her this time, but Leslie, who works at the Lamb and Kid, is an utter connoisseur of bags. And to hear her talk about bags is just a complete delight. And I did get one bag. The brand name is Attenti. To be honest, I don't know the booth I got it from, but Leslie has agreed to come on and talk bags, and she got a bag. But I thought this was so much fun. And then I'm ordering from a well-worn store in town a little leather strap to wear on this. If you recall, Well-Worn Store is the company that made my leather bag, and they have beautiful straps too. But I just think this is such a fun pouch. And then, of course, I want to make a tassel for it as well. We're at the Lamb and Kid today.
Heaven, yes.
Yes, Heaven, chatting on the sofa, and we were just parting to leave, and what happens is I see your bag. So I got to hear the story, and I thought we should share it.
Absolutely.
So let me get the camera on you. Okay, yes. Where were you?
Flock Fiber Festival.
Yes.
In its second season. I didn't get to go last year, but this year I did. And I wasn't sure what I was going to get. I tried to enter open and then I saw this. And I said, this is what I'm going to get.
It's
a Delicue bag. And on the outside, there's a pocket here. And there's a shoulder strap, which is detachable, but very nifty.
Yes.
But what sold me, beyond the fact that they had a little interior bag as well, was this fabulous little scissors corral that unsnaps, and the scissors, which in and of itself is adorable.
Right.
And with a great point, so you can really get in there and do a tight snap. But then it just lives in this little house.
I love that.
And it protects it, and it protects you, because I'm renowned for self-spearing.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Self-piercing when I'm knitting. So.
And all the snaps have little cues on them.
They do, for Delicue.
Were there different colors, or is this the
Oh, that
color?
was a tragedy. I was like, I stood there for ages going, I don't know what color.
Oh.
I don't know what color. Teal.
Okay.
Purple.
Okay.
Rust.
Yes.
This fabulous green, which is, of course, what I ended up deciding on. Part of it was that, okay, I know it's still hot, but I'm starting to feel the fall vibes.
Yes.
And I thought, all right, this will work year round. And go with a lot of things.
I love it so much. I've never seen anything like it.
No, and I love the translucents.
Yes.
And what was interesting too is I felt like wool needs to breathe.
Oh, true.
And so it keeps the freshness of the bag.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Happy.
And then the big story of, for me, was this yarn, this fluff by Le Garçon. So, is that what they're? Well, it's a collaboration, Walcott Yarns and Le Garçon, and this is the color Glacial Depths. And a viewer showed me hers when I was at the Lamb and Kid booth, and then I ran over and I had to get it. It's just such a magnificent color, but it's also the color of the marquee outside of the Fiber Festival. This beautiful marquee that is blue with red letters and gold trim. So of course I got a little bit of red, and I'm thinking gold buttons, and I'm thinking a cardigan. And I of course dragged everybody over to the booth to get their own sweater quantity of this. I don't think I got enough, because when I finished I decided it has to be a brioche cardigan, and I want to do, I've done a brioche class before. I did it for Knit Collage, and I want to do one on my Patreon after Rhinebeck. Definitely want to do a brioche cardigan, and I definitely will need to get more of this yarn in order to do so. But it was a pleasure, and I don't know, I think I brought at least 5 people over to buy sweater quantities, so, you know, it's good yarn. I highly recommend. I don't know, I know they're coming to Rhinebeck, but just as, you know, just as citizens, not, or, you know, just to walk around, not to vend, but there's probably other opportunities where you can find that yarn. And then there was one company that had beautiful, they had sheep there, and they had, it was called the Wild Rose from Whitby Island, and they had this very beautiful sheepy yarn, which I just kind of couldn't resist. It just feels magnificent. I don't know if I pulled off the label. Yeah. So it literally says the name, of course, of this is from Gigi and Lima. And, you know, it's the 3-ply mill spun Teeswater and VBN sport weight yarn. And it's just their booth. Everything about their booth was exquisite. They have like a watercolor of their farm. I just kind of fell in love with everything about them. And the thing is, there were so many wonderful vendors, and I literally, what I'm not the best at is giving you a full report of everything that went on and showing you everything. But what I have always said is, it is absolutely fundamental to go into the world and be amongst knitters in real life. There's nothing like their vitality and their openness and the play that we have. I had so much fun playing with everyone, and people are so magnanimous and welcoming and generous, and it was so fun. I got to meet lots of people who have watched the podcast, and I really appreciate those of you. I mean, I don't want this to be about me, but I will say some of you took the time to say that you appreciate this format and these discussions, and I will admit that it always feels risky to do things a little different than the way the norm is. It always feels like I'm delighted, and I'm going to share it anyways. I can't stop myself from being myself. But it's nice along the way when someone says, thank you, we appreciate that, we get you. So I appreciate all of you who I got to hug and squeeze and talk to, or just wave across the room. Some people are old friends, and I literally saw them passing and thought, oh, I'll for sure get back to them, and did not. And I guess that's what I want for any of you when you go to fiber festivals is, you know, to realize the potential that you're going to be laying down relationships that will you'll keep encountering these people in new ways in your creative making, in your journey. And that's just really, I don't know, I really love focusing on the people that I collect in my life more than even the yarns that I collect in my life. I brought home some beautiful yarns, and I'm just now kind of starting to recover my shoulder a bit. Oh, I should say I did this on Instagram. These are these Sami bracelets. There's a mosquito bite, but they're made with reindeer leather, and then they have pewter and silver thread and little reindeer antler buttons. And I thought these were just lovely. There's, I believe I saw like a reddish leather and a grayish leather and of course a black leather. And I do think I saw some bronze thread too, but I loved them. I thought they were gorgeous, so I brought those home with me when I went to Paulsboro. I wanted to show you one more thing before we go. When I got home, there was a package waiting for me, which I haven't even opened yet, from Ivana of the Republic of Me. Oh, and oh my goodness, aren't these beautiful? She's knit me a pair of socks. Oh my goodness, isn't she wonderful? Look at these. Oh, they're so beautiful. They must be birthday socks. And I'm opening them right here, right in front of you. And then I don't know if you know, but she has started making stitch markers, and I'm also just opening them right here for the first time, us together, so you can see her beautiful stitch markers. Aren't those lovely? Those are beautiful. Thank you, Ivana. I honestly can't believe that you knit these gorgeous things for me. I love them. I love this color. And then I have a package from Sweden as well, which I want to share with you, which I haven't opened yet. I just thought I'd share it with you right here. I mean, I can't tell you how blessed I feel to have these gifts move through my life. And I know where this came from. I saw her work and I thought it was magnificent. Oh, she said, this is Jenny, and she is land dominated by trees. Happy birthday and release day for your Shrug season design. Enjoy these stitch markers this season. And this little beautiful, beautiful. So there's her logo, land dominated by trees. Knitting accessories. What a gorgeous little bag. Oh, oh my gosh, you guys. Oh, they're so beautiful. Wow. Okay. Do you see the braid and the leaf? Look at those colors. How delightful. Thank you so much. Honestly, I am in awe of this community and all the talent here, including your talent. Absolutely including your talent. So thank you for viewing. If you're a patron, thank you so much. You make this possible for me. Thank you for anyone who's purchased Shrug Season. And I'm going to launch a CAL starting September 1st. Remember, comment below on what helps you thrive in the comments to be eligible to win a Shrug quantity from La Mercerie or Lamb & Kid. I also have throughout the knit-alongs prizes to share from Knitting for Olive, from Purl SoHo. More on that to come. I have so much to show you. Beautiful. I definitely look forward to having this be a workshop-y season of shrug making, where it is really like how to dig in and customize this and choose colors that delight you. That's what I'm interested in sharing with you. If you love a particular shrug and you want to copy it exactly, obviously go for it. I completely, that's completely wonderful. And also, if you want to take some risks and play with color, that's what I'm here for, to do that with you. So thank you again. We're having on the end of the month, the last Friday of the month, we have a Zoom on Patreon where we talk about what we're knitting, and we talk about, you know, what's working, what isn't working. And I certainly plan to host a Zoom kickoff to Shrug season. As I get those details, I will let you know on Instagram, so do follow me there. And thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you again. Okay, bye-bye.